Before closing his eyes, Gregory Peck, an icon of integrity and cinematic charisma, shed tears when he spoke of the woman he had always kept hidden in his heart. A belated confession, but enough to silence the world in emotion. A man born to be a legend. His real name was Eldred Gregory Peck, a name almost buried beneath the dazzling glow of an immortal cinematic icon. Born on April 5, 1916 in La Jolla, California, Gregory Peck did not grow up as an ordinary child. From his early childhood, he carried a quiet yet powerful charisma, a kind of unassuming strength that always made others take notice. These very qualities would later become his unmistakable signature on the silver screen. But Peck's journey to prominence was never smooth. When he was just 6, his world first crumbled. His parents divorced, and he was forced to grow up under the care of his grandmother. Not everyone can overcome such early family fissures, but Peck somehow maintained a rare stability, a silent inner strength that continued to propel him forward in academics and life. Peck first attended San Diego State University before transferring to the University of California at Berkeley. It was here, amidst his English classes and pre-medical courses, where he once dreamed of a journey as a doctor, that a fateful turning point occurred. On the school stage, when the first lights shone upon his expressive face, Peck realized acting was not just an experiment, but a deep calling from within. And he listened. Without hesitation, he abandoned a promising medical path, stepping into a new world where eventually he would become not just an actor, but a moral icon for an entire generation of American cinema. From dark stages to cinematic stardom, starting his career in theater, Peck didn't simply audition. He immersed himself in roles with all his emotional depth and steely resolve. In small touring companies and regional theaters, his gaze already hinted that something grand was about to happen. And then, in the early 1940s, he appeared on Broadway, opening an entirely new era. But if the stage was where he was forged, it was cinema where Gregory Peck truly became a legend. He debuted with Days of Glory in 1944, and his brilliance was unstoppable. His imposing height, a deep voice that resonated like the echo of a conscience, and a dignified demeanor, as if he were born to wear the suit of morality, all combined to create an irreplaceable Gregory Peck. People loved him not just for his acting technique, but because he embodied integrity, justice, and compassion. The absolute pinnacle arrived in 1962 when he transformed into Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. That role didn't just define Peck's career, it became an eternal message of moral courage. Atticus, a Southern lawyer, defending a wrongly accused black man amidst a society rife with prejudice, was a role meant only for someone with ethics in his very blood, like Peck. This role earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor, and to this day it is honored as one of the greatest cinematic performances of all time. A hero not just on screen. The American Film Institute called Atticus Finch the greatest hero of American cinema, but in reality that was also an acknowledgement for Gregory Peck himself. Because he didn't just play a hero, he lived like one. Fame did not deter him from fighting for justice. During Hollywood's dark era, with McCarthy's blacklist when many cowered in fear, Peck dared to speak out, dared to resist. He was one of the few who stood up to defend creative freedom and human rights, even as the entire industry trembled. With that spirit, he continued to support the civil rights movement, speak out against the Vietnam War, and call for nuclear disarmament. Notably, he didn't act to burnish his image. He did it out of a deep conviction that art must be linked to social responsibility. From his choice of roles to every statement he made publicly, Peck exuded astonishing consistency. He once declared, "Tough times don't last, tough people do." No one doubted that was him in flesh and blood. His filmography spans like a galaxy. Roman Holiday, 1953, with Audrey Hepburn, Spellbound, 1945 under Hitchcock's direction. The Guns of Navarone, 1961, Cape Fear, 1962, and The Omen, 1976, each film a milestone. He navigated genres as if there were no boundaries, from drama, romantic comedy, horror, to war epics. Nominated for 5 Oscars and winning once, Peck didn't live just for golden statues. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1969, the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 1967, accolades for someone who left a mark on humanity, not just art. The Shadows Within the Glamour. In October 1942, before the spotlight had fully illuminated his journey, Peck married Greta Kukkonen, a Finnish-American woman of simple beauty and steadfast dignity. Greta, born in Finland in 1911, immigrated to the United States and quickly became Peck's first anchor in life, without fanfare, without scandal, just enduring stability. They had 3 sons: Jonathan, 1944, Stephen, 1946, and Carrie Paul, 1949. But a star's family isn't always a serene haven. As Peck's fame soared, undercurrents in his private life subtly rose. Greta, with graceful composure, tried to build a stable world for their children, while the lights outside relentlessly flickered. Her presence wasn't dazzling, but essential. She was the firm ground upon which Gregory Peck could stand to rise higher than ever before. But then, after more than a decade of seemingly unwavering stability, the marriage between Gregory Peck and Greta Kukkonen ended in December 1955, a quiet but profound crack, ushering in a period of subtle upheavals in his life. It wasn't just a legal milestone, but a precarious turning point, where the light of fame began to collide with the darker corners of his soul. And those darker corners would later erupt into tragedy. On June 26, 1975, the sudden death of his eldest son, Jonathan Peck, pierced his heart like an invisible knife. Jonathan's body was found at his home. No warning signs, no farewell. Authorities starkly stated it was suicide. For Gregory, it was a loss that caused his entire world to crumble in silence. He, always calm and composed, before the camera had to sincerely admit publicly that such pain could not and would never subside. "It was the most horrible thing that ever happened in my life," Peck once choked out. "You never really get over something like that." Those words weren't just a father's pain, but the rawest voice from a soul that had once carried righteous and powerful roles. Jonathan, an intelligent and sensitive young man, was gone, leaving a permanent void, a scar that would never fade in Peck's heart. And from then on, his perspective on life and death was never the same. But that pain did not stand alone. During his marriage to Greta, Peck experienced a moment of deviation when the fire of art and emotion drew him close to another woman, Ingrid Bergman. No uproar, no scandal, but a fleeting yet passionate affair. 2 young, fiery individuals drawn to each other in the intense atmosphere of a film set directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Emotions swelled like an unavoidable chemical reaction. Years later, in a 1987 interview with People magazine, Peck first opened up with a strange combination of frankness and discretion. "All I can say is, I really loved her, and I think that's where I should stop. I was young, she was young. We worked together for weeks, very close, very intense." That confession was not an excuse, but a reflection of Peck's true self, profound, conflicted a heart, both full of love and burdened by torment, torn between responsibility and passion. Another woman, another journey. Just one day after his divorce was finalized on New Year's Eve 1955, a new chapter was written. Peck married for the second time, this time to Véronique Pisani, a French journalist who was a cultural columnist for France Soir. Their first meeting in 1952, a routine interview before he went to Italy to film Roman Holiday, seemed fleeting, but it left a special resonance in Gregory's memory. 6 months later, Unable to extinguish his simmering curiosity, he proactively invited Veronique to lunch. And, from a simple meal, a lifelong journey began. They were not just lovers, they were soulmates, two kindred spirits bonded by intellect, mutual admiration, and an ineffable affection. They had two children together, Anthony, 1956, and Cecilia, 1958. Anthony later also ventured into the entertainment world. Notably, for a time, he was married to legendary supermodel Cheryl Tiegs, a figure who represented both Hollywood glamour and international fashion. Meanwhile, Cecilia Peck didn't choose the easy path, instead forging her own as a documentary filmmaker and actress, inheriting not only her father's passion for art, but also his fire for fighting for justice, women's rights, and humanitarian politics. Despite experiencing countless losses and complex life chapters, the marriage between Peck and Veronique remained strong like a spiritual fortress. For nearly half a century together, they shared everything from the spotlight's glow to the shadows of grief. Veronique was not just his life partner, she was where Gregory found refuge when life's storms hit, especially after Jonathan's death. Peck once said it was she who kept him steady, who gave him the strength to continue fighting for the values he believed in. The Peck legacy continues. Gregory Peck was not just a father, but also a proud grandfather. His lineage continued through his grandchildren, and one of them stepped onto the artistic path with his shadow cast over him. Ethan Peck, his grandson from his first marriage, possesses a face almost mirroring Gregory in his youth, and carries the Peck name to a new generation as a young Spock in the popular Star Trek series. A past icon brought back to life not as a copy, but as a continuation of an artistic soul. And then, at the age of 87, when all the glamour seemed to have receded, Peck uttered a sentence that silenced the world. "She was the love of my life." He wasn't talking about Veronique. He was referring to Ingrid Bergman, the woman he only loved for a moment, but carried with him throughout his life. A confession, after more than half a century, gentle yet earth-shattering. A quiet but resonant curtain call. In the twilight of his life, as he looked back on his journey, Gregory Peck, the legendary face of Hollywood, the moral hero on screen, chose not to remember awards or box office numbers, but a glance, a name: Ingrid Bergman, radiant, mysterious, and never fading. Amidst the dazzling lights of Hollywood and the mesmerizing solemnity of Alfred Hitchcock, a brief but poignant chapter of emotion was written. In the late 1940s, while collaborating on Spellbound 1945, a haunting psychological thriller, Gregory Peck and Ingrid Bergman painted a perfect couple on screen. But behind their radiant on-screen chemistry was a powerful undercurrent, something deep, intense, and absolutely private that not everyone could perceive. At the time, Peck was still a rising star with deep-set eyes and a dignified demeanor that captivated audiences. Bergman was already a living legend, revered worldwide after Casablanca and Gaslight. Their combination created an irresistible allure. But that emotion didn't stop on screen. It crossed the boundaries of the script and seeped into real life silently, secretly. Although whispers later spread among historians and insiders, Peck chose to remain silent. Not out of fear, but out of respect. A farewell to an icon. Gregory Peck's funeral was not merely the end of a career, but a gathering steeped in humanity and memories. A farewell ceremony where every glance, every step told a story. Those present were not simply colleagues, they were witnesses to an entire cinematic era. There, Peck's brilliant career, along with the message of justice and courage he conveyed through his roles, was honored as timeless values. Among those present that day were Lorraine Bacall, the distinctive husky voice of Hollywood's golden age; Sidney Poitier, a close friend and the first black actor to win a prestigious Oscar; and Harry Belafonte, the anti-war singer and prominent activist alongside his daughter, Sherry Belafonte. They came not just to bid farewell, but to give thanks. Also in attendance were Harrison Ford and his partner Callista Flockhart, individuals who held deep admiration for the icon that Peck once was. Mike Farrell Shelley, Faberez, Jimmie Smits, Louis Jordan all carried a piece of Gregory's image in their hearts. The list of names extended to Diane Cannon, Stephanie Zimbalist, Michael York, Angie Dickinson, Larry Gelbart, Michael Jackson, Angelica Houston, Lionel Richie, Louise Fletcher. They were living witnesses to cinematic history, and Peck, that quiet man, was the soul in those unwritten chapters. Tony Danza and Piper Laurie were also present, adding the final colors to a portrait of remembrance. A portrait painted with admiration, love, and boundless respect. All came not for fame, but for a man who lived fully at the intersection of character and art. The truth. After a lifetime of silence, when the affection between Peck and Bergman first blossomed, he was still married to Greta Kukkonen. They knew the risks, knew that if they crossed that line, they could lose everything: their careers, their honor, and even their conscience. But emotions once ignited do not always yield to reason. Nevertheless, both chose silence. A persistent silence that lasted for over half a century. Until the very end of his life, not long before his passing, Peck finally let down his guard. With a low voice and distant eyes, he admitted, "Ingrid was the love of my life. I never stopped thinking about her." Not everyone dares to utter such words, especially after decades of silence. But Gregory Peck was no longer just an actor. Then he was a man unburdening a lifetime of suppressed emotions. He recounted that the affection transcended physical attraction. Ingrid was not just a star, she was an intelligent, profound, and courageous woman. Peck remembered every laugh, every conversation when the cameras were off. Those moments when she was just Ingrid, and he was just Greg. No titles, no accolades, just pure sincerity. They couldn't continue, everyone knew that, but he never forgot. Even when he remarried, raised children, and dedicated himself to humanitarian and political causes, Ingrid's image remained like a sweet imprint that time could not erase. "Some people leave an imprint that time cannot touch," he said. And that was her. Bergman never publicly spoke about that relationship, but her letters and diary entries later revealed she too carried Gregory in her heart, not as a colleague, but as an unnameable memory. And when Peck chose to speak that truth, it wasn't out of regret, but as a final, heartbreakingly sincere affirmation of a silent yet eternal love. On June 12, 2003, Gregory Peck, an irreplaceable icon of American cinema, passed away peacefully in his sleep at his longtime home in Los Angeles. He was 87 years old. The cause of death was bronchopneumonia, a silent but dangerous illness for the elderly. No loud weeping, no dazzling spotlights. Only silence and a final hand clasp from his life partner, Veronique Peck. Veronique, the woman who had been by his side for nearly 5 decades, never left him until his last breath. Her presence by his bedside was a testament to a love that was not loud or sensational, but as solid as a rock. When Peck closed his eyes, an era also came to an end. And in that silence, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. His remains were interred at the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels in Los Angeles, a sacred and modern place, befitting the iconic stature he once held. His grave is not just a memorial site, but a place where thousands come to remember a character, a soul, a symbol of integrity. At the funeral, a moment that brought tears to everyone's eyes was when Brock Peters, who played Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird, stood up to deliver the eulogy. The man whom Atticus Finch's character once defended on screen now became the one to bid him farewell. A circle closed. An icon followed an icon. And that was Gregory Peck, who lived, loved, fought, and departed, with all the dignity this world still needs. If you felt something from this story, please leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more profound stories like this.